You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the season premiere of Picard Season 3, called, confusingly, The Next Generation. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Star Trek on our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. You can retweet us on Twitter at SQPN, and we love to get your comments. Leave comments wherever you find us, and we've got some great listener feedback at the end of this episode on some of our previous episodes, and we want your feedback on this one as well. I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy because it features the three of us, The Secrets of Doctor Who. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Doctor Who. Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens in this episode?
This week, Captain Picard gets a coded message from a wounded Beverly Crusher who nobody has seen in 20 years since she suddenly cut herself off from all her friends. She says, "Do not involve Starfleet and trust no one." To figure out what happened, Picard enlists Captain Riker, who is apparently having family troubles. They figure out that Beverly is in a system just outside Federation space, and they decide to con their way into getting a trip there by pulling a surprise inspection on Riker's old ship, the Titan. However, the new master of the Titan is Captain Unsympathetic, and he immediately insults them in multiple ways. Since they can't convince Captain Passive Aggressive to go along with the plan, his first officer, 7 of 9, breaks orders and apparently ruins her career by diverting the ship anyway. When they arrive, Picard and Riker take a shuttle to Beverly's ship. There they discover evidence of a gun battle. They find Beverly in a critical condition in a medical stasis pod, and since it's been painfully obvious that the reason she cut herself off from all of her friends 20 years ago was because she had a son, probably with Picard as the father, they finally meet her son, Jack Crusher. He explains that he and his mother are being hunted, and a big scary spaceship shows up on cue to menace them. Meanwhile, in a completely different TV series, Raffi Musiker has apparently fallen off the wagon and is taking drugs again, but it's all a ruse. She's actually a deep cover intelligence officer. She has a super secretive handler who refuses to meet with her, and she's investigating a possible terrorist plot. She realizes that the target of the terrorist plot is a Starfleet recruiting center, but she arrives too late. A portal opens up under the recruiting center, and it collapses into the portal. Its debris then rain down from the other end of the portal in the sky over the city. The end.
So, I just want to kind of start by saying I really like this.
Did you?
This is much better.
Much better than season 1 and 2. We're back in space. It's Star Trek to start.
And Picard isn't moody and brooding, and
right.
He's actually energetic and wants to go on an adventure, and it's fun. This was actually fun.
He is, if I can use the word, engaged in what's going on. Yeah, I really like it, and I felt like the chemistry with him and Riker was really good. I really enjoyed that. I felt like the two actors kind of went right back to where they were in the series. I'm enjoying that aspect especially, and there's elements that aren't great so far. I mean, we're first episode, but I'm looking forward to this. I mean, I was looking forward to both the previous seasons, but this one gives me new hope of what we're going to come and see this season.
So I acknowledge all those points. It is better in all those ways. And I'm also optimistic about the series, this season of Picard season 3. At the same time, I think that they made a mistake in releasing this episode by itself. They apparently wrote this series as if it's a 10-hour movie. And that means that it's really meant to be viewed as one piece of long-form entertainment. And releasing it in weekly chunks is therefore a problem.
Right.
Because since they have 10 episodes to play this story out, that means they're not trying to format this for episodic weekly television, where you tell a complete story in each episode and you have the standard, curve of rising action, crisis, and denouement. And we didn't have that in this episode. This very much feels like the beginning of something. And they also, because they have 10 hours to tell the story, they're taking their time. And this episode to me felt slow. It felt slow. It felt like there was not a big resolution. In fact, the way I recounted it, I pulled out the Rafi material and made it its own little appendix at the end. That creates a better cliffhanger than what the episode did. Mm-hmm. The actual final shot of the episode is just the big scary ship showing up. And it's not a particularly effective cliffhanger. So I thought that they at least should have released the first 2 episodes. Next episode will presumably be about getting the band back together, since in this episode we really only have Picard and Riker together at the end. Well, I guess you got Beverly there too, but she's inactive. But we need to get, the others back involved, and presumably that's going to be some of the plot development next episode. But this just felt slow to me, because at least released on its own. Sure. If they had released the first 2 episodes at least. Now, ideally, if it's a 10-hour movie, they should release the whole thing and let us binge watch it. Mm-hmm. But they didn't do that. But at least they should have given us the first 2 episodes so we would have more plot development than what we got this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. This seems to be a problem in a lot of current shows right now, like the way they're, like, especially when they're being released one by one as opposed to the Netflix drop them all at once. I was watching like Carnival Row on Amazon Prime. It has the same problem. The first episode they actually released the first 2 episodes. The first episode alone is not enough. It's like, okay, so not much has happened here. What's going on? Give me a little more. And I could see that there was. It didn't seem to go far enough to really get us into the story to really engage. Sorry, I keep using that word. I'm
don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. Go ahead.
You're a dad. You got to do the dad jokes.
That's right. It's not enough really to get us engaged in the storyline.
Yeah. And viewer engagement is a standard term. Do not get tripped up by the fact it's also a term on Star Trek.
I know.
It's specifically a Picard. But
yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, it was the first act of a longer movie, and they played on that. The scene in Space Dock where that was clearly taken out of the TOS movies.
Yeah.
And, and things like that. And
that's an example of them taking their time and being slow. I wrote in my notes, where is it? When they do the Titan emerging from the orbital space station, it's like, seen this, it's like, I've seen this before, don't need to see it again.
Well, that's kind of become a trope, for lack of better words, for Star Trek from the original motion picture. Enterprise had it. All these other episodes, all these other shows and movies have had that scene. And so, and I don't think, I guess my opinion is, I understand where you're coming from, Jimmy, but I don't think the fact that it was slow was that bad. It set up what needed to be set up in the first episode. Well, I think it did a good job of that.
Well, it's not all slow.
And of course, as we go forward, Raffi's story is going to obviously play in, because we've got the massive destruction of an entire building of Starfleet being rained down on a city. And that was kind of a cool, I like the portal where it actually looked like the portal
video game.
Video game portal. And you even saw the little statue falling out of it.
Right.
But those are obviously those 2 plot threads, what Beverly's involved in and this terrorist attack, are going to come together. And they're
connected
by the same person, or, something along that line. So I think it was a decent first episode. No, it wasn't the best first episode they've ever had in Star Trek, but it was it was a decent first episode. It set up okay, here's the two major threads that we're going to have to deal with this season. How are they going to come together?
Okay.
And it had lots of eye candy too. Dom and I were talking off, long before about, being ship geeks, and there's lots of ship geek eye candy in this one.
Yeah, on the Discord, there was a lot of ship geek talk on the Discord. So if you want to talk about the ships, come to the Discord server. So two things I want to point out in sort of a structural sense that I really enjoyed. Not structural, but production sense. The lack of a long opening sequence. New Trek has had this thing where we've had these long opening sequences, and even old Trek had it too, I know. But this got us right into the story right away. I like that. One thing I didn't like is how dark everything is.
Yeah.
This is modern TV too. Another modern TV problem is how dark all the interior shots are on the ships. And it's like I can't see what's going on. Like who's in the back there? I mean, is it my old eyes? I don't know, but yeah.
I'm sensitive to the darkness issue, although I wouldn't light it the way the Next Gen was lit, because the Next Gen was just blazingly, brilliantly lit. It looked like they were in a space hotel.
Yes,
they were.
I mean, even Discovery's bridge was better lit, than this. So I mean, they could than the Titan's bridge, so they could have lightened things up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's an excuse for Beverly's ship because they mentioned that it's at half power, so you can understand that things like lighting would be down at lowest levels, things like that.
Yeah, maybe Captain Shaw has bad eyes or something. He's from the alternate dimension. Maybe he's from the mirror universe. So we open up with this long and maybe too long tracking shot through Beverly's ship where we see all her mementos, and she's listening to the mixtape that Picard made for her that has the "I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire" playing. For a second there, I was thinking, wait, is this the opening to the first season of Picard? Did I mix up when I told it to play? Because it reminded me a lot of that first episode where Picard is having the dream about Data. So that was kind of interesting. But we see a lot of her mementos from her time on the Enterprise, and then the ship is attacked and boarded by these interesting aliens. I thought that was kind of interesting, and I noticed right away
they're wearing face masks, and so we can't tell what they really are.
Right, and they're speaking another language. And she's shooting to kill. She's disintegrating, with extreme prejudice.
she vaporizes one of them, and then the other, who is wounded on the floor, she then vaporizes him, even though he's down.
Yeah, that was pretty wild.
Phaser shotguns. Forget phaser rifles. You got phaser shotguns now.
Those are pretty wild. And she had locked who we later find out is Jack Crusher Jr. or whatever in another cabin as soon as they were boarded. So she's protecting him.
Yeah, and that's part of what it's just obvious from the beginning who this guy is, because if you're thinking about it, because here's this unnamed crewman all alone with her. He's yelling about them being boarded, and then he's saying, I can help, and she locks him away. Why would you lock away an ordinary crew member?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. And then, she cut herself off suddenly 20 years ago from all of her friends. Mm-hmm. Okay, pretty good idea who that guy is now.
I'm kind of hoping it's not Picard's son, because even though he's got a British accent, which he apparently genetically inherited from Picard, but because we kind of did that in Nemesis, right? I mean, he wasn't his son. He was, spoilers, his clone. But right. Nevertheless, it kind of feels like we'd be going back to that. I don't really want to do that.
Okay, so I acknowledge your preference. At the same time, they broadly hinted that about Picard and Beverly, having a flame, and they never paid that off in Next Gen, in 7 seasons of Next Gen, and so this would be a way to pay that off.
No, I see it. I kind of hope they're misdirecting us and doing something more interesting, but it's probably what you said, Jimmy. It's probably exactly what it is, and
Well, and they did mention that they tried to have a relationship and it didn't work, but
yeah, interesting that if it is Picard's son, she named him after her first husband, not after his father. That there's a little bit of psychological stuff going on there, I guess.
Okay, so here's an alternative that would be interesting. Suppose that she discovered that her original husband had left the necessary genetic matter for her to have a new child. And she decided after Next Gen to pursue that option. And so Jack Crusher Jr. is the son of Jack Crusher and Beverly Crusher. And that's part of why she wanted to cut herself off from her friends, because she's having her dead husband's son.
Right.
And that also would explain why he's named Jack Crusher, because he is his father's son.
My guess is it has something to, he's one of the reasons why they're being pursued.
Mm-hmm.
That's so
Could
that
be,
must be figure in somehow.
That would also explain why she'd want to super protect him, even though reducing the number of hands you have on a phaser in a battle is not a good strategic move.
Yeah.
Right.
There is when you on the closing sequence is this beautiful shot of these panels showing all kinds of information.
A lot of Easter eggs.
Yeah, a lot of Easter eggs, but a lot of them too are things like DNA sequences, brain, different brain scans and things like that.
Yep.
So that could be kind of pointing out that this is basically he could even be a genetic clone of Jack.
Right. Go back to the clones.
Also, there's apparently someone from Star Trek history, presumably Next Gen, that they have not talked about, who's going to be revealed. It's not one of the regular main crew, who they've all advertised are going to be back. It's someone else who has not yet been advertised that's going to be coming back. And my guess is that's who Raffi's handler is.
Right. So not Lore, not Moriarty, but someone else in addition.
Right. Also, I'm not sure that Brent Spiner is Lore in this.
Oh.
We have in one of the previews, Brent Spiner shows up and Geordi says Lore. But I've also seen people say that he is playing a Soong type android. And that could suggest that he's not Lore. He's B4, or because we've had robberies from the Daystrom Institute.
Yep.
So maybe they took B4, or maybe they came up with another Soong type android. So I think that may be how they get Brent Spiner back into the plot as a good guy fighting with the gang. Okay. He's another Soong type android like Data, but not Data.
Okay. So for this story, there's she's injured, Beverly's injured, sends a message.
Well, she gets shot.
Yes. And then we cut to Picard with Laris and
wait. Before we go there.
Yep.
She sends Picard this coded message.
Right.
And the code is ridiculously stupid.
Okay.
Because she sends this to his 30-year-old comm badge,
Yep.
which he just happens to have within earshot in a suitcase. And that's wait a minute. If you're sending someone a coded message on a 40-year-old piece of communications technology or 30-year-old piece of communications technology, that's extremely risky. They are not likely to have I don't have a 30-year-old cell phone within earshot in a suitcase. That's right there. You just odds are if it wasn't for TV magic, you just doomed your chance of this message ever getting through.
Fair.
Then she's got it encoded with this word that we've never heard before, and she's counting on him to be able to guess this obscure word for the codec that's used as a password. And that is another enormous risk. Out of all the words, he's going to figure out the password is the name of the codec you use to encode it. Really? That's very, he doesn't even know that's all very improbable. And it's a ridiculously poor password to begin with if it's just the name of the codec you use to encode it. That's like having the password on your iMac be iMac. Then it's bad on that front. Then once he decodes the message, she stresses this word Hellbird to him. She says, "I'm sending you coordinates," and he looks at the coordinates and says, "There's nothing there." But she also said this mysterious word Hellbird, and that's a reference, Riker tells him, to a virus that we never heard about that the Borg used on the Enterprise when he was Locutus. So this is knowledge Picard doesn't even have. And what Hellbird did was like added 3 to every bit of numerical data that it affected. And so what we've got to do is take the coordinates that she sent and add 3 to every one of them, and we'll get the real coordinates. Okay, now you're asking Picard to implement a second code that of whose existence he does not know anything. So she is just triply doomed her message from ever getting through, except for unbelievable TV coincidence.
Okay, so presumably she would rather this not get through at all than to be intercepted and decoded by somebody. So she's made a desperate Hail Mary. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's not just an old cell phone. It's his comm badge from when he was the captain of the Enterprise, and it's likely to have it on his mantelpiece with his awards.
Really, it's a phone. I don't have a 30-year-old. I don't have my first cell phone for sentimental value on my mantelpiece.
Well, but it's his part of his uniform, and any military man is going to have his awards.
His awards, but not his phone.
They're more than phones, though.
Yeah, we've seen previously in other stories, Star Trek stories, where people have kept their old comm badges. We had them in the first 2 seasons of Picard, in fact. So I mean, yes, it's a Hail Mary, but I don't know if it's like I wouldn't equate it to just like an old phone. I think it's a little more than that.
And
I think Bev's code gambit is ridiculously stupid and is constructed the way it is just in order to give people something to do in figuring it out, especially Riker.
I hear what you're saying, but I think you're overthinking it just a bit much. First of all, the password issue, this isn't just a password. It's gonna, they've got the capability for voice recognition. And yes, you'd have to have someone impersonate Picard's voice, and that could happen. We know that. Again, that's something that's actually available today, is we can use AI to create a voice sample of him. I played with it. It's kind of fun, actually. But you'll have the
note to self. Father Cory has been experimenting with deep fake technology.
Oh yeah. Yeah. A lot of people have chat AI and no. So it's, I think, the whole issue of this, like the Hellbird, okay, she's obviously saying, okay, you need to go talk to, she knew she was going to go to Riker, She
should have at least mentioned Riker. She should have said, go to Riker and tell him Hellbird. Okay, then that objection would vanish.
Well, she's also injured and having to be put into a bio. So anyways, like I said, I think this is overthinking something that really,
I don't want to spend 10 minutes on this either. There's a whole lot more to talk about. So, and I get it. It is an extremely unlikely set of circumstances to get this through, and I agree with that. So we do get a bit of information where people are. We get that Geordi is running the Starfleet Museum. Picard is packing up mementos again, back to mementos, which is interesting. Packing up mementos at his chateau to send to a museum. He and Laris are talking about they're going on a trip, and
they're a thing. They're still a thing, which is good.
Yep. And Laris, they're talking about why are you getting rid of your mementos, and Picard says, like, I'm not a man who needs a legacy. I need a new adventure, and that's really a line that's put there to tell us this is going to be an adventure. This isn't about Picard looking back like last season was. This is about Picard looking forward. This season of Picard. I do want to note, speaking of the comm badge, that in the future, Alexa and Siri are still terrible at finding things.
Yeah.
Because he's when his comm badge is chirping, and he's like, "Where is it? It's in the room." Like,
Yeah.
Thanks.
I don't know. I hear it, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and that's particularly implausible because given the sound sensors they should have in that room, she should be able to triangulate and say it's 5 feet to your left or whatever.
Right. I mean, again, that's what my phone can do that right now with AirTags.
Mm-hmm.
They do deal with the romance issue with Beverly and between Beverly and Picard right up front, right there. Laris asks him, there was something between you, and he tells us, yeah, we had something. It fizzled out, didn't go anywhere, and we moved on. So they really wanted to put a pin in that right now. So Laris tells him, all right, obviously you've got to go do this. I'm off to my Tal Shiar thing that she's doing, or
it was
security
like
consultant.
Security, yeah,
right. Security consultant thing. There's a great bar at Chaltalk 4 where you can see the sunset. I'll save you a seat. That Chekhov's sunset scene. Yeah, that will be it. That'll be the last
end of episode 10.
Yes, the end of episode 10. So then we cut to Riker at Guinan's bar, 10 Forward in Los Angeles for Frontier Day. What is this? This isn't marking the first contact day, right? This is something different?
No.
It's apparently, now they've never referred to it by that name before, so far as I can tell. But apparently, at least according to Memory Alpha, it's the same thing as Federation Day, the founding of the Federation. But I don't know if, presumably they'll explain it to us more, but at least that's what Memory Alpha says right now.
Oh, yeah. Right now I just checked. It says it's the day that Starfleet was founded. So presumably Starfleet was a different day than the Federation.
Just that could be, yeah.
The U.S. Navy is a different day than the United States, that sort of thing. So, okay. So they're celebrating the Starfleet.
And this is a week before Frontier Day. This isn't the day of.
So now we know the time span in which things are going to take place in this season 2, a week. Riker tells Picard he's having family troubles, which is interesting. But we do know that Troy is in this season, so that's presumably going to be some interpersonal elements going on.
And I hope they don't play that too far. I really don't want to see them play that too far.
Yeah.
The apparent and they mention it very obliquely. Picard says to Riker, "I'm sorry to take you away from Deanna and Kestra or whatever their daughter's name is," and all Riker says is actually they'd be glad to have some time away from me.
Right.
And that's all we know, but it does suggest their family problems.
There is a nice moment where before Picard shows up, where Riker's talking to the bartender and says, "Oh, I see you're selling the guy that's selling mementos now. Why are there so many Enterprise Ds?" And so the bartender says, "Oh, nobody wants the fat ones."
Yeah.
It just
gets offended.
Yeah. And then because he does the old man thing really well. And then we have this discussion of Hellbird, this code, and so they figure out Beverly's coordinates, and then that's when we switch over to Rafi, and they do this little bit of misdirection where we're meant to think that Rafi is on this planet Matalis. I wonder where they get the name for that. The executive producer for this season is Terry Matalis. So
yeah, that actually dates back to Enterprise when he was a writer and worked with the showrunner there, Brandon Braga. So that's where that name came from. Apparently the NX-01 Enterprise had visited this planet at one point.
Oh, cool. So Terry Matalis has gone on to have a really big career, actually, and he did the series 12 Monkeys and stuff. So she's shaking down this Orion drug dealer, pretending to have reverted to being a junkie, and then we get it cleared up that she's sorry if I used an inappropriate word, but a drug user. She's reverted, so we're supposed to think that she's reverted.
Is junkie supposed to be a taboo word now?
I have no idea these days. Who knows?
Well, okay.
Just in case.
My thought is don't just talk normal, and if people get bent out of shape, deal with it after.
Okay. So, but we find
otherwise we're going to be pre-apologizing for everything.
That's true.
Now, I hope I'm not saying anything offensive here, but
yeah.
I saw a person the other day, and I know that term "person" is sensitive for some people, but
okay, I will refrain from doing that. And so But what we do find out is that she's actually an undercover Starfleet intelligence. And like you mentioned, she's got La Serena. She's got the ship, Rios' old ship. And she's got this mysterious handler who won't identify himself, won't appear, won't even use his real voice, goes through the computer. And it's
female voice on the computer.
Yes. Right. And it's kind of interesting because if this is a legitimate Starfleet intelligence operation, you would think there would be more than just, you'd actually know who you were working for when you got your orders. So it's kind of suspicious, as we mentioned.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really go like the whole Rafi thing, like this, and then her figuring out, what the target is.
The one bit of information she's able to get, which is a ridiculously small bit. I mean, she tells us that there's been something stolen from an off-site facility owned by the Daystrom Institute that can be used as a weapon. And that's apparently the portal that we see. Whatever technology generates that portal. But she is trying to find out who has it. And the one bit of information, which is ridiculously small, that she gets from the Orion drug pusher, I hope it's not offensive to drug pushers to use that term, is that he's heard that something's going on with the Red Lady. And she initially assumes the Red Lady is either the purchaser or the seller of the weapon, but later figures out it's a term connected with the target. And apparently Google search results are not any better in the 25th century than they are now.
Right.
But she eventually identifies the Red Lady as a statue of Captain What's-Her-Name, who was the captain of the Enterprise C.
Rachel Garrett. Yeah.
Rachel Garrett.
Yep.
That's out in front of Starfleet recruiting headquarters in Sector 7 on planet Metalis. And so she goes there, and it was really nice to see the Rachel Garrett statue.
Yeah.
To see her getting honored. But she's too late and the building gets destroyed.
Right. The statue was due to be dedicated on Frontier Day. Right. And so she was the one who's the Enterprise C was sacrificed in Avenger 3 that brought the Klingons and the Federation into an alliance. So, right. That if people remember that one, maybe Tasha Yar is going to be.
Well, except there was loads of speculation that Tasha Yar was going to be, or her daughter, Sela, who I never liked.
Yeah.
I liked what they did with Tasha Yar. That was great. But then her Romulan daughter, who is her identical self with blonde Romulan hair, I didn't like that. But there was lots of speculation that Denise Crosby would be back as Sela in this season, and they apparently denied that pretty heavily.
Okay. So,
but if it was Tasha Yar, that would be, I would like that. And as far as I know, they haven't denied that.
Yeah.
I wonder how they would do it though.
It'd be fun, but yeah. So that's pretty much Rafi's story in this episode. So Riker and Picard need a ship, and they don't want to charter a ship. They need to get to this planet Ryton. That's where Beverly, or the system called Ryton, where Beverly's coordinates lead to. And so Riker comes up with the idea of basically getting the Titan, his old ship, to take them to where they want to go. And his ruse is a surprise inspection. He comes out with this ruse or plan, as he says.
This is really implausible. Because if someone has a surprise inspection on your ship, presumably, I mean, you can't just based on rank, especially if you don't have an active assignment.
Yeah.
Show up and commandeer someone's ship without orders. Presumably, they would need a file that says, "Here's my authorization to conduct this inspection."
Right. And to take the ship out and go to a place.
Yeah.
Well, precisely to prevent this sort of thing.
Well, especially since Picard is a retired admiral, as it gets pointed out in this.
Yeah.
And the captain of a ship outranks a rank captain. So if they're both the same rank, the captain of the ship outranks the other captain.
Even though Riker's got more time in service, it doesn't matter. He's not the captain of the ship. So I do like on the shuttlecraft, as they're approaching the Titan, Picard doesn't like this plan. And Riker goes, come on, give me one of those rigid, sour expressions you're famous for. And then he kind of looks at me and he goes, there you go. That was really good. This is the Titan refit as what's called a Neo-Constitution class, which Ship Geek moment. Really enjoyed it. Really like this. It's a nice callback to the CC 1701A Enterprise. I really like that one. So really nice looking. And we find out that 7 is the executive officer, except the Captain Shaw prefers she go by Annika Hansen. And we find out that he's
which is an interesting and not unreasonable choice.
Yep.
I mean, if the Borg are our mortal enemy, I don't know that I would want my first officer using a Borg designation with the crew.
Right.
And it also, it's like, if you're really a human and loyal to us now, how about using your human name?
So I want to say something about Shaw right here, which is, as you mentioned, he is rude, boorish, ill-mannered, uptight, and completely right.
And passive aggressive.
And passive aggressive. And completely right.
Yeah.
in everything he says here. And in fact, because Picard and Riker are trying to undermine him and steal his ship, essentially. I mean, he's not wrong about anything he says to them in the course of this abbreviated dinner. And so it's kind of funny to see, like, you're supposed to be like, he's the enemy of our heroes, but yet he's right. And so it creates this internal conflict.
And so they try to write him in a way that is slightly sympathetic, but at the same time make him very unsympathetic. I mean, he, like, within the first 20 seconds, he's insulted Picard and Riker 3 different ways. I mean, I counted.
Right.
And they're all very subtle passive-aggressive insults, but they're insults. And so he comes across as our, you know, he comes across as a paint-by-numbers bad guy. You know, we're meant to not like him. I mean, not a villain, but, you know, he's an obstacle to our protagonists. And apparently he's gonna play a larger role in the 10 episodes and come across differently as they move forward.
Sure.
So I'm glad to see that he's not just going to stay in this kind of paint by numbers, passive aggressive, unsympathetic mode. He's going to have a larger role and redeem himself as a character. So I like that.
I mean, he's a lot like Captain Styles of the Excelsior in The Search for Spock, and
what a loser.
The other captain from the Enterprise B in Generations. So, you know, there's a tradition of these kind of captains out there.
Well, the captain of the B wasn't
a jerk.
Bad. He wasn't a jerk. He was just
bad,
caught off guard. Really,
he was a bad captain.
Quickly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I
saw a little bit of Jellicoe in him too, though.
Oh,
Jellicoe was very much by the book, straightforward. Things need to be lined up. And Jellicoe was not a bad captain. He wasn't a bad person. He's just by the book. This guy was just more of a jerk, you know, sitting there already eating by the time they got into the hall there, the observation place.
Yeah, and Jellicoe was not passive aggressive. He was just very matter of fact and a little bit aggressive, but he was a good captain, actually.
And he was right. Again, he was right, just as this guy was.
He disdains Picard's gift of wine, which, you know, the Chateau Picard. Oh, I prefer, which one was he? Riojas.
Malbec.
Malbec, that's right. And then disses Riker's love of jazz as disordered, and he prefers his music to be more, you know, ordered and, you know, classical music.
I found this particularly grating. And it may be partly because of how I was raised, but being from the South, a premium is put on politeness, especially in social situations. Yeah. And when you are the host of a dinner and you have invited people to the dinner, you do not insult them in this low-level needling way.
Right.
Can you imagine, Father Cory, if the former pastor of your parish showed up at and you started dinner without him, and just you told him, "Oh, I got rid of all that stupid music that you left behind." And
oh no, I mean, I couldn't imagine that. I mean, just the idea that he invited them to the dinner. He didn't have to invite them to a dinner.
Yeah,
he didn't come to meet them, which itself was kind of an insult. But then, he didn't have to invite them to a dinner either. And no, I could never imagine that. Even and there are some former pastors that I know in this diocese of this parish that were in this parish that I might not be the happiest to see them, but I'm at least gonna be courteous.
Right.
If one of the former pastors showed up for a mass or whatever, I invite them to. Would you like to celebrate? Would you Would you like to do the reading of the gospel? Whatever. I would at least be courteous to them. I wouldn't sit there and go, oh yeah. When you did this, the issues with the money that you left for me to clean up, we're not going to do that, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
This really as you point out, he didn't greet them. He let his first officer do that, and she gave them an excuse of he's got paperwork he's doing.
Yep.
He's catching up on some logs. I don't know what that means, but okay, he's doing paperwork, and then but you're invited to this dinner, and it's like, okay, this is a classic humiliation setup. This is a humiliation dinner. I'm going to make you wait for me. Then when you show up, I'm already eating.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to insult you several ways verbally once you get there. This is just a classic put these guys in their place situation.
Power moves is maybe called too. Yeah.
By the way, that steak that he was eating looked disgusting too. I don't know what that's supposed to be. That was yuck.
Oh, I thought it was interesting. He's eating a green steak. It looks like it's made out of spirulina or something.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe it's a delicacy. So and then to add insult to injury, there's no proper accommodations for them. They get stuck in a bunk bed,
which is funny. Yeah.
And then what was it? They had proposed going to Wrighton and got shot down right away by Shaw. It's like, nope, not going. That's not in our orders and not going to happen. And then Seven calls them to the bridge in the middle of the night and kind of reads them the riot act a little bit. Like, I don't know what you're doing here. Obviously, it's not for a surprise inspection.
Well, it's not on the bridge. It's
observation lounge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But, and so this is also in my notes, Seven's stupid gambit. Because she has, without telling anyone, without telling Captain Shaw, and without telling either Riker or Picard on her own initiative, without being asked to, she has diverted the ship to these other coordinates. And exactly how she knew the coordinates, I guess she heard Wrighton system and knew the coordinates from that. But
yeah.
But this is a really dumb move for an officer. She is ruining her career, based on real world logic. Yep. And she's ruining her career without even checking with Picard and Riker about what are the stakes. I mean, she may be able to guess that they have some special reason for wanting to go there, but she didn't know that. They may just have picked it randomly, and she's ruining her career, taking them to a system they may have just picked randomly for an inspection reason.
Yep.
Yeah. She says like I preferred being in the Fenris Rangers until I let you and Admiral Janeway convince me to be Starfleet, etc. And maybe she just wanted to torpedo her career and get out of it or whatever. Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, it does seem weird that she didn't at least find out, are they just going on a joyride to Wrighton?
Yeah.
Like,
that's how they presented it to Captain Shaw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Meanwhile, we should mention that we have another character that we get introduced to, Geordi's daughter, Sydney.
She is hot.
she's the helmsman.
I like her.
Yeah, she was fun. Who's got a nickname? Yeah,
I love Picard's like, is there something wrong with that ensign? She's grinning like a jackal,
Yeah, because she'd met him before when she was a kid. So she's like, "Hey, remember me?" And he's like, "I don't remember you. What's wrong with her?" And then reminds her. I think Riker reminds everyone of her nickname at the Academy, Crash LaForge, which is
because she crashed the shuttle
twice.
Twice.
And she kind of goes, "Oh,
Yeah. So they get to the Righton system. They sneak Picard and Riker off on a shuttle to get to Beverly's ship, and apparently disable the tractor beams and the transporters. Who knows? But they don't do either of those. I'm kind of curious what happens to the Titan at this point, because is it still sitting
It's still
there?
there. It's still there.
Okay,
so Captain Unsympathetic came up to the bridge when he found out what was going. When he woke up and saw there's a nebula outside.
Yep.
And he came up and demanded to know where they were. And Seven told him we're in the Righton system. And he says, "Okay, you just torpedoed your career, and now you're going to write me a full report about why."
Right.
Yep.
And I would love to read that report. It's going to be like, well, I knew these guys and they expressed a preference to go there. And even though they could have picked it randomly and it was just a test, like they were saying, I decided to divert us here anyway.
Yeah.
Although, yeah. I mean, so he's going to... Maybe
I'm surprised that, and Father, maybe you can comment to this, but if the XO of a ship comes in and changes the course dramatically from the course the captain has set, isn't there a protocol to notify the captain or make sure that this is coming from the captain or something?
I can't speak for Navy, but I know that essentially you're obligated to follow all orders unless they're inherently unlawful. Unless you can
right.
tell, like if the XO comes in to the bridge, hands, one officer a gun and says, "Shoot this officer," then obviously the answer is no.
Right.
But if it's I could imagine that in the Navy that there are times when the XO is, the captain tells the XO, go to the bridge and set these new coordinate, this new course. And the people are just going to do it. Unless the captain then calls up and says the XO is being insubordinate, to belay his orders. Then it would be different.
Yeah, and this is one, and this may not be a flaw, but and I'm not questioning that they would obey the XO's orders. It just and she may have come up and said, "I have new orders from the captain. We're going here." Exactly. In which case, it would take care of the concern. But we didn't see that, and there's a tendency on the part of the viewer to assume that the characters in the story know what we, the viewer, know. And since they showed us the captain vigorously opposing this course of action, literally a course, there's going to be a tendency to ask, well, why didn't the bridge crew question Seven when she made this new directive? Wouldn't they at least have checked with the captain to see if it's what he wanted?
Yeah, I mean, unless they have reason to believe Seven is doing something untoward, waking the captain to ask him if the first officer's new orders are correct could possibly be a bad career move.
Right.
Well, it could be, but if they know that the captain's asleep, then that would also be suspicious. How did you get these orders from the captain if he's asleep?
Well, there could be all kinds of reasons for that.
I know, XO, but it's just reasons for asking questions.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. He gave her the con. She has command of the ship, at least as far as where the ship goes, how fast the ship gets there, et cetera, et cetera. So the crew would have had no, again, unless it was something that was clearly, I want you to fly through the neutral zone.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to get proof from the captain on this first. This needs to come from the captain, not from the XO. As far as we need to change course, instead of going left, now we need to go right. That's within the XO's prerogative as the con. So I
agree.
Concern, but I think the crew did not see the argument in the mess hall.
I agree, but my point is, at least partly from a writing perspective, the way they showed it to us is going to raise questions in the viewer's mind that they did not address.
Sure. Yeah, as someone who's not familiar with how a military chain of command would work, you'd say, well, why didn't the helmsman check with the captain? That raises the question.
But that's been a complaint. That could be a complaint Star Trek all the way back to TOS. I mean,
well, they've changed course on anybody's orders at times.
Yeah. Random instance says go that way. Okay.
Yeah. I mean that's the thing. But it's a good point. It's a good point. Like and we could have had a scene of Sydney, kind of questioning and being told, mind your helm and that sort of thing. I did notice, like, one thing we forgot, the Shaw says to Seven in the dining room was, when she tried to kind of stand up for Riker and Picard, he's like, your loyalty should be to the ship, not to ex-shipmates and an ex-Borg, which, man, that is about the harshest
deep
one.
Cut.
Yeah. But on both of them. So they get there, they board Crusher's ship, and they find her in this hibernation pod, which she's been placed inside. They find her, send Jack, and then the big old ship.
Riker sucker punches Jack.
Yes, he does. And then, reminiscent of the Star Trek Nemesis, the big alien ship comes out of the nebula cloud at them. I just thought there was like a very similar, and I don't know if it's intentional, similar feel to it as that ship from Nemesis.
Yeah.
So.
It also looks like a Vorlon ship.
Yes.
That's right. And then we met, and that's where we, big cliffhanger, or so, and, or at least big ship. And then we have the end credits where we talked about there was a lot of these clues to the season in there. Things like references to a holodeck, the Fleet Museum, the DNA analysis. I didn't catch everything. I didn't go through with a fine-tooth comb, but I'm sure there's more.
There are videos on YouTube of people dissecting that sequence.
Yes. Go find those. Those will be interesting.
There's actually a lot about the Borg in the closing sequence, including the closing music, which was from First Contact. It was the opening music for First Contact. But there's, for example, I went through some of it. There's a damage report for the USS Constance lost in action 44002.3, which was the Battle of Wolf 359.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There were, what else did I see there that there was mentioning? I wrote on down just a couple of things, but there was stuff about the Borg in this, so the Borg is probably going to play a little bit of a role. Of course, again, we get the reference to the Borg there, but then we see like the Fleet Museum with Voyager. The USS Voyager is there, the original Voyager.
Yeah.
Pioneer, which is the NCC 1500. I don't know if that's a ship that's
from a game, Star Trek Online, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was interesting.
Yeah. I've only played very little Star Trek Online, so I never saw that. But
yeah.
Enterprise A is there. And then the NCC 2000 Excelsior is there.
Right. Excelsior. Captain Styles again.
Yep.
Cool. I do want to mention, I really love the music in this episode, and I'm hoping that we get a lot more of that this season, because it did feel like a throwback to the TNG series and movies, and I really like the music. So, any other notes on this episode, Father Cory?
So, at the beginning, when Beverly shoots that conduit that causes the gas to come down, we find out later that it's DeLorean gas. As in the DeLorean, as in Back to the Future.
Oh, nice.
So I wonder if that was a little bit of a little nod to Back to the Future there.
Right.
That's the only thing I got.
Jimmy, anything else?
So the name of Beverly's ship is the Helios 12, or I think that's the number. Yep. Helios is the Greek word for pity, compassion, or mercy. So for a former doctor, appropriate ship name.
Yeah, that's true. Nice. All right, we did say we had some listener feedback, so I want to get to that now. We've kind of piled up a bit, and our first feedback comes from episode 245, which was on the Voyager episode Jetrel. Kyle Cullen on YouTube wrote, Janeway is not a war criminal. That's ludicrous. If I was jumbled with someone else, I would still feel resolute about my right to live. I was born first. And I'm pretty sure that's a reference to, as we mentioned, to the Tuvix episode, where I think we talked about how Tuvok and Neelix got mixed together in that episode, and what Janeway did might have been a human right violation.
Well, yeah, it was. I mean, she murdered Tuvix.
Right.
In terms of the war criminal thing, now I know that I barely remember Jetrel. I remember there is like a war criminal from a war that Neelix's people fought in, and that's kind of the crux of the issue is war criminality. But I don't remember it well enough to be able to comment on the idea of Janeway being a war criminal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the whole idea of two people being jumbled together and pulled apart, it's hard to come up with whether that is right or not, or that sort of thing.
Once you have a new person, you cannot kill them to get two people back.
Okay. Then on our episode 238, on the Prodigy episode Preludes, which was where we got all the stories of how the kids got together, what happened to them before, user Truly Awesome New Mexico Catholic on YouTube writes, I think it's a good name. Hey guys, thanks for the episode. I've always liked Jimmy's books, but just came across this now. I really like Prodigy because I love Star Trek, but I have little ones, so it's great. Anyway, I'm glad you pointed out that this episode had many writers. I didn't catch that, but it makes sense. I didn't like that this episode seemed like a backstory dump. They should have spread these over several episodes. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad you enjoyed the show.
Yeah. As far
Our
as
show, at least.
yes. Spreading out the stories, that could have been okay, but I think they had a point to having them all in one. So
You're also talking about a format that's 25 minutes long.
Oh,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah,
it's less than 21 minutes long
I was
once
gonna
you
say-
take out.
yeah.
Including a minute and a half of opening.
Yeah.
So
The really long opening.
the full episodes, counting credits and opening sequence, is 25 minutes long. So they wouldn't have time, I think, kind of throughout to build up to these flashbacks the way you
Right.
can in more of a 45-minute long episode.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Then on episode 247, the TNG story Data Lore, James Williams writes on YouTube, the actor who played Data, Brent Spiner, did a really good job doing the different characters, but the performance is so seamless that people might overlook it. But hey, you've got one guy doing two completely different characters and doing it flawlessly. Yeah. I mean, it was, a good job of doing the two and keeping them separate. Yep. And then Truly Awesome New Mexico Catholic comes back to comment on this one, says, thanks for this episode. So Data Lore may not be a great episode, but Jimmy is wrong. Lore is an awesome character. I think he was just scarred by seeing this bad episode. Brent Spiner is just a really good actor, and good actors are what carried TNG until the writing gets good.
Well, I don't have a problem with Lore as a character. So, I don't mind Data having an evil brother. That's fine. But I don't like the way Lore is portrayed in this episode. I think it's a bad episode. And Lore only appears in 4 episodes. He appears in this, he appears in Brothers, and he appears in Descent Parts 1 and 2. Yep. And I don't like Descent Parts 1 and 2 either. I think they're substandard. The best of the 4 is Brothers, where Lore has a relatively small part. That's the one, in case people may not remember it, where Data activates and seizes control of the Enterprise and goes and finds the still living Dr. Noonien Sung,
Right.
who sent a code, and it's where Sung introduces the idea of giving Data an emotion chip. But Sung didn't realize that Lore had been put back together, and so Lore has also activated and come to find Sung, and he impersonates Data and steals the emotion chip. And Lore is by far the best written there. If that's the way Lore was all the time, I would have no problem with Lore. But in these other contexts, and I know why Brent Spiner would enjoy playing him, because he gets to ham it up. But I think the writing is substandard in these other episodes.
Right. All right. So that's all of our feedback this time. We love to get your feedback, so please send it in. Now we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Rebecca C., Alphonse L., Donald F., Tom E., and Kevin B. Their generous tax-deductible donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. We'd love to hear what you thought of The Next Generation. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to trek@sqpn.com, or visit our StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. And you can watch The Secrets of Star Trek in video on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where you should comment, like, and subscribe. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next new episode of Picard called Disengage. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Don. But now, can we get Galaxy Quest: The Next Generation?
And Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you. Live long and prosper. And I think I hear my 30-year-old cell phone ringing.
And once again, I'm Don Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, a point comes in a man's life when he looks to the past to define himself, not just his future.